Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight, our guest is Julie Lynn Nast, survivor, kidney transplant and rejection patient, longtime dialysis patient, and a courageous new kidney advocate. Julie's had a very difficult life. As a child, Julie dealt with recurring bladder infections and was only treated with antibiotics. No further testing was done. In January of 2001, when Julie was just 15, her mother was killed by a drunk driver. Her brother took custody of her. In her own words, this was the worst time of her young life. When Julie turned 18, she was a senior in high school. She got her own apartment. She spent almost every weekend drinking alcohol as a means of coping with her mother's death, as she was still grieving. She snuck the alcohol into school in a water bottle, and she would come to school drunk or hungover almost every day of her senior year. In May of 2004, she had just turned 19, near the end of her senior year. After lunchtime, she felt really sick, like she had the flu. She was nauseous and vomiting, had a fever, and the chills. She went to a local walk-in clinic where labs were done. The results showed an elevated white blood cell count, high creatinine numbers, and she was referred to a hospital and was immediately admitted. She spent a week in the hospital and received IV antibiotics and a blood transfusion. She was nearly septic. While she learned that her kidneys were slowly shutting down, she was told that she did not need to start dialysis quite yet, but her nephrologist would keep an eye on her kidney function with regular labs every couple of weeks. Although she was accused by family of harming her own kidneys by drinking, further testing showed the kidney failure was caused by reflex, which means some of the urine that flows goes in the wrong direction after entering the bladder. Some of the urine flows out of the body, some of it flows back up toward the kidneys, and it can increase the chance of developing a urinary tract infection, and in the most severe cases, kidney failure. This was linked to the bladder infection she suffered as a kid, not to the drinking. Apparently, she had a bladder infection when she went into the hospital, but she had no symptoms until her release, and it affected her kidney after her release. In October of 2004, she learned she was pregnant and ended up not only with her regular OB, but also a high-risk OB doctor. The high-risk OB doctor would demand that she get an abortion at almost every appointment, claiming the baby would not survive or she would not survive a birth of that child. However, our friend Julie is a woman of faith, and she felt she would take the risk of having the baby because it might be her only chance to have a baby. In January of 2005, she started dialysis when she was just 3 months pregnant. The pregnant was causing her kidney to progress, her kidney failure to progress. In June of 2005, labor was induced and she gave birth to her son at 36 weeks. He was 5 pounds, 4 ounces, and 17 and a half inches long and fit into 18-inch doll clothes. He was somewhat healthy and placed in an oxygen tent for the first 24 hours to regulate his oxygen and blood pressure. Later, he was placed into an incubator for 8 to 9 days with jaundice and a bilirubin light for a few days, and the incubator helped to maintain his body temperature. Unfortunately, a couple of days after his birth, Julie was then diagnosed with congestive heart failure because being pregnant while on dialysis made it very, very difficult to determine just how much fluid to take off. Her heart was functioning at only 25%. Julie had a kidney transplant on August 1st, 2009 from a deceased donor, and by September of 2014, the kidney rejected. She has been on dialysis since then for over 9.5 years. She is currently attempting to get back on the list for transplant, and despite the adversity in her life, Julie has become a terrific, and I mean terrific, young kidney advocate to help her fellow kidney patients. Please give a warm welcome to our friend, Julie Lynn Nast. Now, one word from me. Pinned to the top of my personal Facebook page is Julie's broadcast. Information about Julie, if you need more information, is in the comments to that post, so you can check that out. I would suggest that if you're going to do that sometime during the broadcast, because after the broadcast, StreamYard creates a replay almost right away. And so that post will get knocked down to where it should be originally posted rather than tied up to the top. So, at any rate, let's get right to the questions. Julie, did I state everything correctly in the introduction?
Yep, everything was correct.
All right. Please tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your education, and your employment experiences.
So I was born and raised in Oshkosh. That's where I'm currently living now. I went to Merrill for elementary and middle school, and then I went to North High School here in my town for 2.5 years, and then I transferred to West after my mom died. Employment, I've only had one job, and that was at our local, is a call center warehouse, and I was hired as sales, and then I was promoted a couple of times to different areas.
Okay, great. We already have people online watching the broadcast. Our friend Wendy Jeffries Crowder is on. She sent a heart. So shout out to Wendy. Thank you for checking us out. I want to get into your kidney story, Julie, but I'm so excited about your advocacy work. I wanted to discuss that first, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay. Let's talk about some of your experiences with the dialysis patient citizens, or other people might know them as the DPC. I understand. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I understand that you had a visit to Washington, D.C. in October of 2023. Maybe that was with your friend Vanessa. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so DPC, I've actually been an advocate for them since 2016. I just didn't start doing a lot of work with them until about 2021. So 2021 and 2022, I was selected for their annual advocacy day. You have to apply for the spot. And because of COVID, it was virtual. So I got to meet virtually with our state legislators and talk about 2 policies that are dialysis or kidney related that need to be changed. And then October of 2023, I was invited back for their annual advocacy day, and this was the first year that it was in person after COVID. So my best friend Vanessa and I flew out to Washington, D.C. It was my first time on an airplane. I was so nervous, but it was her like 5th or 6th time on a plane, so she handled it like a trooper. So at that event, we were there for about 4 days, but the last day was the event where we got to go to the Capitol building and talk to our state legislators. I was paired up with the Indiana group. But unfortunately, someone tested positive for COVID that morning. So the event was canceled and we had to do it virtually again in 2 weeks, which is fine. I mean, I've done that before, but I was just kind of bummed that I didn't get to go there I didn't get to do the thing that I was supposed to go there for, you know. But I did apply for the spot this year, and unfortunately I didn't get selected. Their focus this year is on newer people so they can get the experience to go. But I'm still part of DPC and working with them, so hopefully I'll get selected again next year.
I saw that in part of the video they did for their 20th anniversary. You made an appearance.
I think it was just the back of my head. I don't know. I didn't say anything in the video.
No, I very clearly saw your face. I think you were with your son.
No, that was World Kidney Day. That's what that was.
Okay. I understand that you've written a couple of things for them. The thing that I saw most recently was a letter to the editor concerning to restore protections for Dialysis Patients Act. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that Restore Protections for Patients Act is about private insurance coverage. So as of right now, they have a policy that says anyone that starts dialysis or on dialysis that has private insurance, it is no longer covered. Dialysis treatments are considered out of network. Everything else is covered, all doctor's appointments, medications and all that, but dialysis treatments are not. And it forces people to get into Medicare a lot sooner when Medicare is supposed to kick in after 30 months of starting dialysis. So it's raising the costs of Medicare because Medicare is having to pay for more, and it doesn't give patients the choice to choose what insurance coverage they want for treatment.
Okay. Got a couple of shout outs. Our friend Jennifer McClunk is saying hello. And the Ant-Man is with us, Anthony Ant Reed, A-N-T, not your Uncle Ant, saying hello and saying it's great to be here. So thanks, Anthony. The other thing that you mentioned to me before the broadcast was something about your friend Katie. Can you talk to us about that writing?
So I work for a website that's based out of the UK. You can actually find that website link on my advocacy page, and I was selected to write articles for them, and our key focus is patient stories. And Katie is a patient that I decided to write about for my first article. So I was pretty new at this. I just got selected probably about a month ago, maybe a little less than that. And I just submitted my first article last week, and it was just published a couple of days ago. So Katie, I don't know her personally. I've never met her before, but she actually lives quite close to me in the next state over. I'm in Wisconsin, she's in Michigan. So our plan is to eventually meet one day. So I did spend a couple of days talking to her and asking questions about her story and getting to know her a little bit. And then I had to write an article about her. So I will be writing more articles about various patients and until I decide to stop with this website. But my goal is to keep going. I enjoy writing. I enjoy learning about other people's stories and getting to know them. Is kind of exciting because I get to talk to a team of other people, and they're all from the UK, so hearing their accents is kind of fun.
Well, that's great, Julie. And by the way, everybody, the link to that website is in the comments to the broadcast that's pinned to the top of my personal Facebook page. So if you want to drill down and take a look at that, it's there.
Yeah, the more views we get, the better it is, because it's a newer website, and we need to get that website out there and get some views going.
Okay. Talk to us about your advocacy work for the AKF, the American Kidney Fund.
So I had just recently signed up for American Kidney Fund, as well as AAKP and the National Kidney Foundation, probably about a month ago. When I found out that I wasn't selected for DPC this year for their annual advocacy day, I got kind of bummed. And I signed up for all the advocacy things because I still want a chance to go out to DC again and to do other advocacy work. So the American Kidney Fund, I'm also a kidney health coach through them. It was just a quick coaching session that I did to get certified. It took about 2 to 3 hours to complete the session, and then I got a certification, and now I get the opportunity to educate others, whether it's one-on-one, in person, or online in a group setting. And I get to educate them about kidney health and ways to prevent kidney disease, as well as treatment options.
Okay. With the AKF, are you going to be in DC in May?
Nope. They have different times where they go to DC, as well as the National Kidney Foundation and AAKP as well.
All right, Julie, you let me know if you need a recommendation from any of those groups, okay? Because
Okay.
I'm tied in with those guys. I was Advocate of the Year in 2019 for the NKF, and as far as the AAKP goes, I'm on their board of directors. So if there's anything at all that I can do to help you, you just send me a note and I'll take care of it, okay?
Sounds great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I saw you have 2 pages on Facebook. One of them is entitled Julie's Kidney Warrior page, which I'm assuming is like an advocacy page. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I just started that page up a couple of weeks ago, and I used that platform to post educational articles or information about kidney disease, ways to prevent kidney disease. I'll even post other things from different various kidney pages, like the National Kidney Foundation. If they post something interesting that I feel like people need to know about, I'll share that on there. I'm just starting to learn how to post videos on there. I'm pretty new to it, so it's way different than a regular personal page, so I'm still learning some things. I tried to host an educational session on there for my kidney coaching, and do a live video, but for some reason I'm not well established on there yet to have a live video streamed on there. But hopefully eventually I will have enough followers and I'll be able to stream on there. But yeah, that's just for my advocacy stuff and educational stuff about kidney disease.
Okay. You also made a post in support of something that was of interest to me, SB 215 in Indiana, dealing with Medigap and Medigap cost. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, so that's another policy that we talk about with DPC. The last couple of years that I've been selected for their annual advocacy day, that's been one of the main things that we talk about with our state legislators, and that's in regards to a lot of states, their Medigap coverage for anyone that's 65 and under, it's not covered for them. So Medigap coverage is basically covering that extra 20% that regular Medicare doesn't cover. And most states, it's not covered for anybody under the age of 65, and it's not affordable. In Wisconsin, I believe that it is covered, but it's still, in some plans, it's not affordable for most people. So we need our state legislators to sponsor that bill or policy so we can get that changed.
Correct,
So,
correct. Thank you for sticking up for us here in Indiana.
yeah.
You did a broadcast with two of my favorite people in the world, Christina Gilchrist on January 2nd.
Yeah.
About being pregnant while you're on dialysis. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I actually got to meet Michael and Christina in Washington, D.C., and they showed me their home hemodialysis setup in their hotel room. We actually still talk on a regular basis. I'm hoping to actually write an article about Christina for the website that I'm working on. But yeah, I asked them if I could be on their podcast, and they said, yeah, sure. And they interviewed me. So I told them briefly of my story on there. It's on major music streaming services like Pandora and Spotify. So if anybody wants to listen to that, it's available on there.
Excellent. Excellent. Do you have anything new that's coming up concerning your advocacy work that you can talk to us about?
I do know that they have, for AAKP, there's a Washington, D.C. summit in November. So I'm hoping I get to be a part of that. There's also some support groups that I'm a part of. Next week, there is a symposium. It's based out of Ohio, but it is virtual as well. So I'm going to be a part of that. And there's 3 different days, and each day is a different topic. One of them is the Transplant, which talks about the pig kidneys, and then women's health, and then I forget the third topic, but I'll be a part of that. I just had a meeting with our local state legislator, Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin. That was with American Kidney Fund, and I was just sharing my story with her. And then August 14th, we have our Congressman Glenn Grothman that's coming and visiting my dialysis clinic while I'm there. So that should be fun. Yeah.
Wow. I'm telling you, a lot of advocacy going on there, Miss Julie. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
Tell us, you made a post that kind of struck me. Tell us your feelings about dialysis not running your life.
Yeah, so I don't let dialysis stop me from living my life. I mean, I'm going to have my bad days where I don't feel good, but those good days, I take advantage of them, and I just do everything that I possibly can to enjoy that day. Because as we all know, chronic kidney disease is terminal, and our lives are limited, and we have limited lives already while we're still here because of those bad days. So I like to spend as much time as I can enjoying my good days, getting out there, exploring, going on vacations and little road trips. My son and I like to go to little petting zoos that are in the area and petting farms. I just recently took a trip to Kentucky to see the Ark Encounter and Creation Museum. I did have to do 2 treatments of dialysis while I was there, but when you travel, it just takes a little bit of extra planning. So don't let like dialysis treatments stop you from not traveling. You can still enjoy life. When I went out to DC, I had to have treatment there as well. So it just takes a little more planning.
Okay. We've mentioned your son a couple of times. What is your son's first name?
Darian.
Darian. Okay. And if I remember correctly, he's older now. He's not a little boy anymore. Is that right?
Yep, he's almost 19.
Wow. I am so old, Julie. Wow. Let's talk a little bit about your kidney story now. I mentioned that as a child you had this recurring bladder infection issue and you were only treated with antibiotics. Testing wasn't done. Tell us what it was like when this started and what it was like for you as it continued.
So, as a young child, I remember getting bladder infections quite often. I remember going to the doctor's office quite often and getting antibiotics for that, but I never recall them ever doing any type of testing or treatment to further explore like my kidneys or anything like that. Couldn't figure out why I was getting reoccurring bladder infections. The doctor thinks it was part of the reflux. So every time that it would reflux up to my kidneys, I would get an infection. I'm not sure. I know that in 4th grade, I had a really bad bladder infection where I had to go to the ER and they gave me injections. I think they were antibiotic injections. I don't know. I was like 9 years old, so I don't remember. So we tried many different things as a kid to try to prevent the bladder infections. I know one of them was switching to unscented soaps and stuff. Yeah, so I don't really recall much as a child, but as I became a teenager, I still got those reoccurring bladder infections. I also had a hard time controlling my bladder as well, my bladder muscles. So I often had to go to the bathroom quite a bit as a teenager.
Okay. I understand that in January of 2001, when you were just 15 years old, your mother was killed by a drunk driver. Your brother took custody of you. You described this as the worst time in your life. Can you please explain why?
So it was, my mom was a single mom, so it was just me and her. And, you know, as a teenage girl, the one person you need in your life is your mom. That's the hardest thing to have to go through is teenage life. And your mom is your biggest supporter, right? And when my mom passed away, it was very tragic. She got killed by a drunk driver, as you mentioned. And she was actually killed with her coworker. It was about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning on her way home from her 3rd shift job. I did not find out until later in the day when I was at school. I remember being in that office with a couple of teachers, some police officers, my brother, and a couple other people when they told me. But yeah, I would say it was the worst time in my life because when my brother took custody of me, it felt like he was no longer my sibling anymore. He was my authority figure. Like I had to listen to him. And 3 weeks after my mom died, my brother got married when they were supposed to get married like middle of summer that year, but after she passed away, they decided to move up the wedding to be married sooner. And my brother was an over the road truck driver, so he was hardly ever home. So I had to listen to his wife and obey her rules, and I was constantly being punished for ridiculous things that I never even did, or she would ground me just so she had a babysitter for her own kids. And just, it was a lot of mental and emotional abuse. And when my brother would get home from his job, she would act like nothing ever happened, that everything was fine. It was about 3 years of emotional and mental abuse with them until I moved out when I was 18. I moved out right away. Like, as soon as I turned 18, I was out of there because I could not deal with that anymore. It's still a very painful subject to talk about, and honestly, I could probably talk about that subject for hours because that time in my life was very hard. She thankfully they're not together anymore. They're not married anymore. They've been divorced now for over 10 years, but going through the grieving process as a teenager with losing my mom, and then having my brother take custody of me, and then just being treated like garbage the whole time, and not really caring about me grieving. There were times when there was one time when I said I need someone to talk to, and they assumed that I needed to go into a 72-hour hold. I was not suicidal at all, but I was sent to a mental health facility for 3 days when I didn't need to be there. It's just that kind of stuff that they would do. They didn't care to talk to me about anything. They just sent me to someone else or sent me away. I did run away quite a bit to my friend's house when I was a teenager because that was my only escape. Yeah, it was awful.
Wow. I'm so sorry, Julie. Let's talk about what happened when you turned 19, near the end of your senior year, when after lunch you began to feel sick. Tell us a little bit about what went on then.
So yeah, it was about a month before graduation, and all of a sudden I just felt really sick. I was in the far end of the building away from the school office, so I couldn't even go get help. I couldn't even get off the bathroom floor. I was throwing up, dry heaving. I had the chills. I could tell I had a fever, but I didn't have a thermometer on me, obviously. But eventually a student or a staff member, I can't remember, this was 20 years ago, came into the bathroom and they saw me laying on the floor, and I said, "Can you go get some help?" And somebody went to go get the school nurse, and she brought me back to the office, and then they called my son's dad at the time. I wasn't pregnant yet, but we were together. She called him to have him pick me up, and we decided that, it's probably just the flu. And if I don't feel better by the next morning, that I would go into the urgent care. So that's what I did. I felt way worse the next day. And I went to urgent care, and they did lab work, and it said that my white blood cell count was elevated, and they noticed that my kidney function was down a little bit. They also did a urine test, and it showed that I had a bladder infection. Now, I did not have any symptoms of a bladder infection. If I did, it was probably that day. So it just happened so fast, where it refluxed up to my kidneys immediately as soon as I was feeling symptoms. And then I was sent to the hospital, where they admitted me for a week. I had a blood transfusion then. They did a blood culture, and it showed that I had E. coli in my blood. So I was borderline septic. I had IV antibiotics. I think I had 2 different antibiotics, if I remember correctly. But I was there for a week, and then I was stable at that point after they discharged me to go home.
Okay. We talked about this a little bit, but I want to make sure this is clear for our audience. What caused your kidneys to fail?
So after further testing, it was determined that hydronephrosis was the cause, as well as those reoccurring bladder infections, and then the reflux too. So it's kind of a mix of all of those.
Okay. In October of 2004, you learned that you were pregnant with a risk to either you or your unborn child, and you ended up with a high-risk OB doctor. And when you went in for visits, she would make continual suggestions. What were her suggestions, and what was your response?
She didn't even give me any options of what I could do. She just demanded that I needed to get an abortion every single time until, eventually I went in and it was too late to get an abortion. So I would say probably about 3 or 4 times that I went to go see her, she would demand that I would get an abortion. And she would tell me, oh, based on my medical book, there's no written information about pregnancy and kidney failure. And she said, you're going to lose this baby or you're going to pass away, and you shouldn't be putting your body at in this risk, and it's really hard to lose a baby. And I told her, look, this is not up to you. This is not up to me. This is my only time to ever have a baby in my entire life. I don't believe in abortions. And abortions are very dangerous too. And I told her it's just not an option. It's up to God. And I told her, this is a blessing from God, and I'm going to take the risks that come with it.
Okay. I understand that by January of 2005, you had started dialysis and labor was induced. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my regular OB doctor recommended that I would get induced at 4 weeks early, so 36 weeks, because with kidney failure and being pregnant, the placenta could potentially deteriorate and detach from the wall. So he recommended that I get induced early, because I started dialysis when I was 3 months pregnant. And then June 6, 2005 is when I was induced. It was a Monday morning, so I had dialysis treatment that morning. And then I went upstairs to labor and delivery. And then they induced me, and I had my baby that afternoon.
Okay. And we're talking about Darian, correct?
Yep.
What steps did they take to protect him?
Like after he was born, you mean?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so yeah, his oxygen was a little bit low, so they put him under an oxygen tent for the first 24 hours. And then being a preemie, they have a hard time regulating their body temperature, so the oxygen tent helped with that. But then they also put him in an incubator after they were done with the oxygen tent. And I would say he was in the incubator for a little over a week. He was in the hospital for a total of 10 days. And with being a preemie, he had a little bit of jaundice, so he was under a bilirubin light for a couple of days. And he didn't have oxygen anymore. But he did have a little IV in his arm. I think that's it. Just the incubator. So he was really healthy to be a preemie, to be 4 weeks early, and to be a baby of a mom that's in kidney failure. For the most part, he was healthy.
Excellent. Excellent. I understand that a couple of days after Darian was born, you were diagnosed with congestive heart failure, heart only functioning at about 25%. Can you tell us what happened there and how you felt?
So I was still in the hospital with Darian. I wasn't a patient anymore, so they put me in like a spare hospital room. And I was laying there, and I tried to lay flat, and I couldn't breathe. It was a lot of like tightness in my chest, and I just felt like I had a lot of fluid on my lungs. I just couldn't breathe. So I went down to the ER, and they did a chest x-ray, and they saw that my heart was enlarged. And then they did an echocardiogram, which is an ultrasound of your heart. And it was determined that I had congestive heart failure, and it was probably due to not pulling off enough fluid off my body with being pregnant. It's hard to determine the difference between pregnancy weight and fluid weight when you're pregnant and on dialysis. So I had to have an emergency dialysis treatment. And then I was admitted into the hospital for 2 days as well, to get that extra fluid off. And then going forward, I had to see a cardiologist as well. I was also on some cardiovascular medications as well. I think I saw the cardiologist probably once a month or every other month. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But back then, when I was pregnant, I was only on dialysis for 4 hours or 2 hours and 45 minutes. And anything under 3 hours is kind of pointless. And nowadays, if you're pregnant, you're on dialysis for 5 days a week for at least 3.5 hours.
Correct. That's what I learned too.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about your kidney transplant, August 1st, 2009. Tell us a little bit about that. What was it like when you got the call, and transplant day, what happened?
So I was working out at our local aviation event, which is like an airplane show, and people come in from all over the world. And we were camping that year, and we had a bunch of kids with us, our kids, my son and my son's father's 2 kids, and then they had friends with them. And we took them out to the little kids/teen dance that they had out there at the campground. And I was walking back with the kids after the dance was over to our campsite, and one of the kids had the phone, and she answered it. This is before smartphones existed. She answered it, and it was Madison Hospital, which is the transplant hospital. And she handed me the phone right away, and they told me that they had a kidney for me, and I just dropped to my knees in the dirt on the way back to our campsite. And I was on the phone with them for probably an hour getting everything situated and stuff. And then we had to pack up and leave right away and head down to Madison. It was about an hour and a half drive there. So they said that we didn't need to be there right away, that the transplant wasn't going to happen until the morning. This was like at 11:30 at night. So I'm like, okay, that's good, because then we don't have to rush, but yeah, so the surgery was right away in the morning at like 8 a.m. And that was a very exciting time for me. I was amazed. I was on the list for 6 months in Madison. So
Okay, and when we're talking about Madison, that's the University of Wisconsin.
yep.
Okay. I understand that you had a rejection in September of 2014. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I was actually going through some small rejection issues throughout my whole transplant journey for those 5 years, due to reoccurring bladder infections again. So in September of 2014, I had a part-time job at that time. I was working there for about 4 years, and I ended up receiving a small raise, because I had just recently got promoted, and our yearly evaluation was coming up, and I got a raise at that time. And I was on our state insurance, which is our Badger Care, or Medicaid is another name for it. And that was paying for my anti-rejection medications. Now, at that time, my kidney function was stable, not perfect. It was right around 30%. So my kidney could have lasted for another couple of years at that percentage if I was taking good care of it too. So, and with that small raise that I had at my job, I ended up losing my state insurance because I made a couple $100 more than what was required to stay on state insurance. And I tried everything to get back on it. And the thing is, too, they sent me a letter in the mail a few months prior to that. This was like in May, probably, saying that I'm going to be kicked off of insurance. And then about a month later, they sent another letter in the mail that says I'm still on it. So I didn't think anything of it. Then the next thing I know, I went to the pharmacy to fill my prescriptions, and no insurance. So I tried everything to get that insurance back. I lowered my hours at work to the lowest amount that I possibly could. I tried contacting the manufacturers of those transplant drugs. One of them said they will not cover free medications. The other manufacturer said, we will cover it if it was a double transplant, meaning a kidney and a pancreas, like if I was diabetic. Well, I only had a kidney transplant, so I couldn't get the medications from them. And those medications for each of them are pretty close to $1,000 a month or more without insurance. And at that time, with being only part-time, I couldn't afford insurance through my work. The premiums and the deductibles were outrageous. I wouldn't have any money left of my paychecks if I had private insurance through work. I would pretty much have to be working in order to, working just to afford insurance, and that's it, pretty much. So yeah, that is why my kidneys rejected ultimately in 2014. I ended up back on dialysis. They actually started rejecting in August because that's when I lost my insurance, and then I was back on dialysis in September.
Okay. I understand from the notes that you wrote to me that you've been back on dialysis now for a period of 9.5 years. Is that correct?
Yep, it'll be 10 years in September this year.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Have you made any attempts or effort to get back on the list to try and obtain another kidney?
Yeah, so throughout the 9.5 years I have, and each time they tell me a list of issues that I need to work on, and I get those things done, and then they give me a whole new set of lists of things that I need to work on. And they are very strict on who they can accept at the list. So I remember when I first started to try to get an evaluation, they saw that I had nodules on my lungs, and that could have been from like scarring from pneumonia that I had. And then my mobility issues, so I had to get my knee surgery done. I had to get my parathyroid glands removed. So I got those done, and then COVID hit, and shortly after the vaccines came out, they came out with a policy that says anybody that's on the transplant list has to be fully vaccinated. Now, it's my own personal choice to not be vaccinated. I don't even get vaccinated for the flu. I have my reasons for that, and I'd rather not get into that, but so that kind of put me on hold for the last couple of years. Milwaukee now, Freighter in Milwaukee finally lifted that policy, and so did UW-Madison. So I just had a pre-evaluation in January, which is kind of like just an interview type of thing to get your medical history and stuff like that, to see if I qualify for the actual full evaluation where I go down there and get all the tests done. So I still have some things to work on. I was doing a hyperbaric treatment in January for some necrotic tissue on my toe due to the peripheral artery disease. So that's one of the things I had to get done, was to get that toe healed and finish the hyperbaric stuff. And then they still want me to work on my mobility as well, because during the hyperbaric treatments, I was relying on my wheelchair more, and I need to be walking more and get my strength back up. But the toe is healed now, and hopefully now I can get reevaluated. There is some other issues too, some female health issues that I have to get fixed and situated, but then hopefully after that, I'll be able to get reevaluated.
Excellent. Excellent. Julie, I give all my guests a chance at the end of the broadcast to make any final statement that they want to make to our audience before we conclude for the evening. From all your experiences, is there anything that you would like to say to our audience?
Yeah, so now that I'm a kidney health coach, I cannot say this enough. Well, even before I became a coach, prevention is key to kidney disease. So always get checked at your doctor's office at least once a year. It's a simple urine and blood test to make sure that your kidneys are healthy. And also make sure that you're checking your blood pressure and blood sugar on a regular basis, even if you're not diabetic and even if you don't have high blood pressure. Those are the two most common causes of kidney disease, and prevention is key. And keeping an eye on those numbers is very important. And then also I want to say, if you are on dialysis or have kidney disease, just, know that it's not going to stop you from living life. Like I said before, previously in this interview, get out there and enjoy life as much as possible and take advantage of those good days. Spend quality time with family and friends, even if you don't get out of the house. Have people over for a movie night or a game night. I always have game nights with my friends, and it's so much fun. And, on those good days, if you feel physically well enough to get out there and take a day trip somewhere, go ahead and do it. You want to enjoy life as much as possible, and just because we're on dialysis doesn't mean our life is over.
Excellent. Excellent. I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight, helping to educate our audience and to raise awareness for kidney disease and the very fine work that you're doing as a kidney advocate. I don't think in the 3 years that I've been doing this that I've had anybody come on that's any tougher than you are. I mean, oh my God, the things that you have been through in your life and that you've overcome, you're an example for all of us. And I just wanted to say that I'm very, very glad that you're my friend. Just very, very glad, and I'm very proud of you. Thank you for taking time to talk to all of us this evening.
Well, thank you for having me on here, and thank you.
Well, you're welcome, Julie. All right, I've got a couple of things to button up with my audience. I've kept you here for almost an hour, so your Uncle Jim talks too much. I'm going to let you go, but I just want to say fabulous broadcast tonight, my friend. Really did an excellent job.
All right, sounds great. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Have a good night, Julie.
Bye.
Bye-bye now. All right, everybody. That's our broadcast for this evening. Next week, same bat time, same bat channel. Gail Ray Garwood is coming on. Blog writer, book author, PKD patient, incredible advocate. Man, we got a lot to talk about next week, so be sure you check us out. So, okay, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Great comments tonight, and a lot of audience. And the replay will be up soon. So, if you missed the broadcast, don't worry, it'll be available. And watch this space, my friends.